If you feel dizzy and your head feels tight or heavy, it's easy to worry it's your brain. But in many people, the pattern is more about systems that affect the brain, like blood flow, inner ear balance, breathing, and stress chemistry. The goal here is not to diagnose you. It's to help you recognize common combinations of symptoms that tend to travel together. That way, you can describe your experience clearly and notice what reliably triggers it. Pay attention to timing. Does it hit when you stand up, after screens, after meals, or during stress? Notice the quality too. Is it spinning, rocking, floating, or just off? Head pressure can mean sinus and jaw tension, but it can also show up with migraine patterns and neck issues. Brain fog often points to sleep, inflammation, or unstable energy. We'll walk through the most common patterns and the red flags that should not be ignored. By the end, you'll have a practical map of possibilities to discuss with a clinician. Moving to slide 2. First, it helps to sort dizziness into a few buckets, because different causes create different sensations. Vertigo is the classic spinning feeling, often tied to the inner ear. Lightheadedness feels like you might faint, and that often points to blood pressure, hydration, or blood sugar. Disequilibrium is more like unsteadiness, as if your balance system is lagging behind. And then there's brain fog dizziness, where you feel detached, slow, or unreal, sometimes with head pressure but not true spinning. These categories can overlap, but naming them makes your story clearer. Also note duration. Seconds can suggest positional triggers. Minutes to hours can fit migraine patterns or anxiety surges. Days to weeks can happen after viral illnesses, vestibular inflammation, or ongoing sleep disruption. Finally, track associated symptoms. Hearing changes and ringing suggest an ear pathway. Neck pain suggests a mechanical pathway. Visual sensitivity suggests migraine or visual vestibular mismatch. This sorting step is the foundation for everything else. Moving to slide 3. One very common pattern is dizziness when you stand up, bend down, or take a hot shower. That often points to a blood flow regulation issue. When you stand, gravity pulls blood downward, and your nervous system should tighten blood vessels and raise heart rate slightly. If that response is slow, you can get lightheaded, head pressure, and fog. Dehydration, low salt intake, heavy sweating, and some illnesses can make this worse. So can long periods of bed rest. Some people notice a racing heart with standing, which can fit a dysautonomia pattern, including POTS-like symptoms. Others mainly feel pressure behind the eyes or a cotton head feeling. A simple clue is whether symptoms improve when you sit or lie down. Another clue is whether mornings are worse, because you're relatively dehydrated after sleep. This pattern is worth documenting. What position change triggered it, how long it lasted, and whether your heart felt like it was pounding. Moving to slide 4. Another big pattern is inner ear and vestibular causes. Your inner ear is a motion sensor, and when it misfires, your brain gets conflicting signals. Benign positional vertigo is a classic example. Brief spinning when you roll in bed or look up. Vestibular neuritis or labyrinthitis can cause longer-lasting vertigo, often after an infection, sometimes with nausea. Ear fullness, ringing, or hearing changes can point towards specific ear-related conditions, although those symptoms can also show up in migraine patterns. With vestibular problems, head pressure can be a secondary effect from muscle darting, jaw clenching, and the stress of feeling off balance. People often describe a boat sensation, like rocking, especially in busy environments. A key clue is whether motion makes it worse. Walking to a store, scrolling on a phone, riding in a car. If dizziness is strongly linked to head position or motion, the vestibular system deserves attention in your symptom map. Moving to slide 5. Migraine is another extremely common pattern, and it does not always include a pounding headache. Migraine is better thought of as a brain sensitivity state. It can show up as head pressure, facial pressure, dizziness, nausea, light sensitivity, sound sensitivity, and brain fog. Some people get visual aura, others just feel off and can't think clearly. Vestibular migraine is a well-known subtype where dizziness is front and center. Triggers often include irregular sleep, skipped meals, dehydration, hormonal shifts, and certain foods, but triggers are personal. The timing can help. Symptoms can build over hours, peak, then fade, leaving a hangover fog. Neck stiffness and scalp tenderness can also appear, which confuses people into thinking it's purely muscular. If your dizziness comes with sensitivity to light, screens, or strong patterns, and if it tends to come in episodes, a migraine pattern is worth discussing with a clinician. Moving to slide 6. Neck and jaw tension can create a different pattern, more like pressure, heaviness, and unsteady feeling than true spinning. The upper neck has dense nerve input that helps the brain map head position. If the neck is irritated or tight, that input can become noisy, and you can feel off balance. People often notice this after long desk work, driving, or clenching their jaw. Head pressure may sit at the base of the skull, behind the eyes, or around the temples. You might also notice headaches that feel like a band, or symptoms that worsen with certain postures. This doesn't mean it's all posture, and it doesn't rule out migraine or vestibular issues. It's more that neck tension can amplify them. Helpful clues include reduced range of motion, tenderness, and dizziness that flares when you turn your head or hold it forward for a long time. Documenting these mechanical triggers can be surprisingly informative. Moving to slide 7. Breathing patterns and anxiety physiology can also create dizziness with head pressure and fog, even when you're not consciously panicking. If you breathe a bit too fast or too deep for a period of time, carbon dioxide levels can drop. That can cause lightheadedness, tingling, chest tightness, and a floaty unreality feeling. Stress also increases adrenaline, which can raise heart rate, tighten muscles, and disrupt digestion and sleep, each of which can feed brain fog. Many people get a pressure sensation from scalp and jaw tension during stress. A clue is variability. Symptoms surge during meetings, driving, crowded spaces, or conflict, then ease when you're absorbed in something calming. Another clue is frequent sighing, yawning, or feeling like you can't get a satisfying breath. This pattern is real physiology, not imagined. It's also common to have it on top of another driver, like migraine or vestibular sensitivity. Moving to slide 8. Blood sugar swings and meal patterns can produce a very specific kind of foggy dizziness. If you go a long time without eating, some people become shaky, irritable, sweaty, and lightheaded. After a high sugar or high refined carb meal, others feel a crash a couple hours later. Fog, fatigue, and pressure, sometimes with a fast heartbeat. Digestion also shifts blood flow toward the gut, so large meals can make some people feel heavy-headed or sleepy. Caffeine can complicate this. It can temporarily sharpen focus, but it can also worsen jitteriness, reflux, and sleep, which then feeds the next day's dizziness. A useful clue is timing around food. Do symptoms hit before meals, right after, or 2 to 3 hours later? Also note whether it improves with a balanced snack or hydration. This isn't about strict dieting. It's about recognizing whether your dizziness tracks energy regulation and meal timing patterns. Moving to slide 9. Sleep quality is a quiet driver of both head pressure and brain fog, and it can make almost any other cause feel worse. Poor sleep increases pain sensitivity, reduces attention, and changes stress hormones. People often wake with a heavy head, dry mouth, and a fog that doesn't lift for hours. Snoring and possible sleep apnea are especially important because repeated drops in oxygen and frequent micro-awakenings can create morning headaches, dizziness, and concentration problems. You don't need to be older or overweight for that to matter. Another sleep issue is inconsistent sleep timing, which can trigger migraine patterns and worsen balance sensitivity. A clue is the morning pattern. If symptoms are strongest on waking and improve later, sleep-related factors move higher on the list. Also note whether naps help or make you groggier. Sleep isn't a soft factor. It's a core input to how stable your brain feels all day. Moving to slide 10. Sinus, allergy, and eustachian tube issues can create facial pressure and a blocked ear feeling that people describe as head pressure dizziness. True sinus infection is less common than people think, but congestion and inflammation can still affect how pressure equalizes around the ears. That can lead to muffled hearing, popping, and a sense of imbalance, especially with altitude changes or weather shifts. Postnasal drip and chronic allergies can also disturb sleep, which then adds brain fog. The tricky part is that migraine can mimic sinus pressure very convincingly, including around the cheeks and forehead. so the pattern matters. Allergy-related pressure often comes with itching, sneezing, watery eyes, and a seasonal or exposure link. Ear pressure issues often flare with flights, elevators, or rapid weather changes. If your main complaint is pressure plus ear symptoms rather than spinning vertigo, this pathway is worth considering in your overall map. Moving to slide 11. Now let's talk about red flags. Most dizziness is not dangerous, but some patterns should be evaluated urgently. Sudden severe headache that's different from your usual is one. New weakness, facial droop, trouble speaking, or new vision loss are also urgent signs. Chest pain, fainting, or severe shortness of breath should not be brushed off. A new severe spinning vertigo with inability to walk straight can also need prompt evaluation, especially if it's paired with neurological symptoms. Persistent vomiting with dehydration risk is another, and if dizziness follows a head injury, even a minor one, that changes the context. The point is not to scare you, it's to give you a safety filter. If none of those red flags fit, the next best step is usually structured tracking. What it feels like, what triggers it, how long it lasts, and what else comes with it, so a clinician can narrow the possibilities efficiently. Moving to slide 12. To make this practical, here's a simple way to describe your pattern in 1 minute. First, name the sensation: spinning, lightheaded, rocking, or foggy. Second, name the top trigger: standing, motion, screens, stress, meals, or mornings. Third, give the time course: seconds, minutes, hours, or constant background with flares. Fourth, list 2 add-on symptoms: ear fullness, ringing, nausea, light sensitivity, neck pain, palpitations, or nasal congestion. That short summary often gets you closer to the right pathway than a long story. As a next step, consider keeping a 2-week log with sleep, hydration, meal timing, and episodes. If you want, write down one forced choice. Does it feel more like spinning or more like faint? That alone can separate vestibular from circulation patterns. If this breakdown helped, subscribe for more calm, practical health explanations. And in the comments, tell me which fits you more: A, spinning, rocking, or B, lightheaded, faint. This information is not a substitute for medical advice.